Superintendent Tyson Bennett of Sherman Independent School in Texas resigned after a controversial removal and reinstatement of a transgender student in a high school production of Oklahoma sparked outrage nationally. The school board accepted Bennett's resignation following a closed session and appointed Thomas O'Neill as interim superintendent. The controversy began in March when Max Hightower, a transgender student, was barred from playing a role that did not match his sex assigned at birth. After significant backlash, the school reversed its decision, reinstating the original cast and script. Max's father, Philip Hightower, praised the board for advocating for all students, hoping it marks a shift towards inclusivity and standing against discrimination. The story is from NBC News by Joe Yurkaba on May 2nd, 2024. So, Cindy, I'm coming to you. I'm wondering, what impact do you think the superintendent Tyson Beckford is a hot model, not to be misconstrued with Tyson Bennett, but his resignation will have on Sherman's independent school district and its handling of issues related to transgender students?
I don't know. I don't know this state enough to be able to have a qualified opinion, but I would say
it is Texas, so just keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's I don't think it will have a huge impact, maybe specifically in the school for a few years, but the political climate is so hard on trans people right now. I saw a video of Pete Buttigieg recently, and he was talking about how the far right equates being different as an adult subject, how the simple fact that those people exist is an adult subject when it's simply not. It's just people existing. And I don't see how we can get better when I see the situation right now, how polarized the US is, because it feels like on one side, the purpose is just to be mean to everyone. And I don't know how you can come back from that kind of mentality of wanting to trigger other people just because you like it and it just feeds you. I just don't know how you can come back from that. And so I don't think one guy being fired for that is going to change much. It's going to change a hell for the life of this teenager, that's for sure, in a good way. But other than that, I don't think it will help much.
You know, you said something very interesting when you talked about how basically it becomes a polarized issue just to mention a people exist. And I think about like how, especially on the right, you have such outcries about people who happen to be not white, not cisgender, not that are cisgender, that are heterosexual, and how this is supposed to be the norm, but any person who happens to be outside of that particular group is considered, oh well, you're being woke, right? Just because you mentioned that these people exist, and it's very. And I don't know how we come back from that either. Kelly, what are your thoughts from that?
I was going to say, as the only old white guy cis male on this panel, I have to say, I am qualified to say this panel is pretty goddamn woke.
Okay, cool. Okay, that's fine. I mean, like, listen, I don't necessarily have an issue with using the term woke. I've used it for a long time before it became polarized. woke just really just meant, when I used to use it back in the day, that, you just need to be aware of the systems that are around you and how they could affect you if you happen to not be white or a man or both or anything of that particular effect, right? And like right now, I just see when we're having these particular discourses concerning, like, especially trans people, that, just like giving them a place to say, I exist, I am here, I am human, and I want to live my life and participate in life and community around me. That's the polarizing issue. And it makes no sense to me. But, but Kelly, since you mentioned wokeness, this article actually mentions the school board, held a special meeting last week to discuss terminating Bennett, but did not take any action.
Yeah, they didn't.
Yeah. So what factors might have influenced the board's decision to even accept his resignation that particular week? The week after.
You know what? I was wondering why they didn't vote to get rid of him, and that I found it really interesting. And then it made me wonder what it was that talked him into resigning. And I have a feeling they probably made some kind of backroom deal. You just resign and you go walk away from this without the bad, we had to fire you thing hanging over you for the rest of your career. And I'm pretty sure that had something to do with it. But I want to know, and this is not something, again, you read these stories, you want to know more, you start doing some research on them, and you can't get the answers to some of the questions. And I want to know, was Bennett responsible for getting this kid kicked off the play? Was it somebody at the school? Was it the principal? Who was it exactly? Because we don't actually know. And I think that person should be the one we're talking about here. And if it was Bennett, that's fine. But I want to know that it was Bennett, and I can't see like somebody on the school supervisor on the board of supervisors calling up the school to complain about one kid. That just doesn't. I mean, it could have happened, but it doesn't seem probable to me at all. It seems to me that there was probably somebody at the school or somebody affiliated with the school that made that decision.
Well, let me ask you, do you think that Bennett was just like, since you brought it up, do you think he was just like a fall guy?
He could well have been. I don't know that he was, because he may well have made the decision. But there is a really good chance that, we have to do something. And maybe that's why they made that backroom deal, to let him walk away without being fired. We understand that it's not you who made this decision, but we have to take some kind of action, and somebody has to go, and you were where the buck stops last at that school. And so it's got to be you. And I could see that happening. I don't know if he was actually the decision maker or if he was just a scapegoat. I could see it going either way. And that's why it's been a really bad week for getting answers to questions that we're covering, because I've been trying to do some deep dives and I just can't get some of the details I want. So,
oh my goodness. You know what? I just want to say to all news outlets, how dare you keep information away from Kelly from not being able to do deep dives? How dare you? We need these things. This is why we pay Kelly the big bucks. But you mentioned something concerning, like,
he give me a raise.
Yeah, I know, right? I'll talk to the powers that be about giving you a raise once they give me a raise and everybody else on the panel. But I think that one of the things that the article mentioned, because I talked about it earlier, is that there was a national outcry of why on how like egregious removing Max Hightower was from this production. And basically, I'm thinking that since there was a national outcry, there was a lot of pressure to do something. Right?
Something, right?
Yeah, and since like it was a national outcry to do something, sometimes that just means that we pick a guy and you're the visible guy, so you got to go, or if you make it your particular decision, then maybe it's not that bad. But and Phil, I wanted to ask you, how do you think public pressure and media attention influenced the school eventually reversal of its decision?
Well, I think that without public and external pressure, nothing would have changed at all. The truth is, in a small rural area like Sherman, Texas, I would say that And I do think the principal is likely played a role in it beforehand. If not, he's an incompetent principal because he should know what's going on in the school. So
Right.
presuming that he had a certain level of culpability there, I would say that he thought it was a dime a dozen decision. I don't think he thought it was controversial. And I think in the local area, he's completely correct. I think that they would not have cared. It's only because there was external pressure and because it got the publicity that it did that we have the results we have. Because once again, this is a very rural part of Texas. And so it's not hard for me to imagine them saying, you know what, we don't want any of that transgender stuff here. And so this is what happens. And I don't think this is as isolated as we'd like to think it is in Texas. So with that in mind,
Or
this
in
one got
America.
attention. Or in the
America.
United States in general. So
Right.
with that in mind, I think it was the attention that changed the situation.
You know, I could think of years ago during the civil rights movement, one of the tactics was to use media to show people at lunch counters getting beat up or, you know, pulled away, or protesters getting dogs sicked upon them, or also
Fire hoses.
fire horses on them, right? In order for them to, for all of these, for the world basically to see that, hey, you know, the people who happen to be standing up for civil rights, these are not isolated incidences, and it's not just in people's minds. It's really happened. And it really wasn't until like you had like that the world is watching you type thing happening, until there was like some type of like movement on the federal level to really create and push legislation to change things. And, you know, reading this particular story, that's kind of like how I see it. It's like using media, using people's voices, using these particular things to like show that, you know, this kid is a kid, and the kid was only removed from this production because they're transgender. Full stop. You know, it had nothing to do with their ability to be able to act out of the part, had nothing to do with them not being able to have the capability of doing anything that was called for him to do. You just removed him because he is not what you want him to be. He does not fit this particular criterion. So I know, Cindy, you mentioned that you don't really think that this particular incident is going to be effective in really being a change agent per se. But let's say, for instance, you had the attention to be able to put in the catalyst for the change agent. What do you think could be the thing that could really help communities and school districts work together to create environments where all students feel safe and supported?
Well, I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat myself, but every single discrimination has false information at its core. Like trans people are crazy or whatever. Homosexuality is a choice. Mexicans are lazy, or other
Criminals.
words, criminals, etc. And so there are two ways to fight this. Either you pick one topic and try to defend the people who are discriminated against, and that's a valid approach. But the other way is to attack the bad information at the core of the discrimination. And to do that, you need education and critical thinking. You need both. So, because when you listen to the people, the right wing talking about how talking about gay people makes people gay, like, how does that work exactly? How many gay people have been exposed to only straight movies and TV shows and books all their lives and still they're gay. So how
They-
can
they
it
have to touch
work
us
in
to
the other
me.
way?
They have to touch us so the cooties can move from them to you.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, then I should be the gayest thing that ever ran into the face of the earth. Then, if that's the case,
Yeah, it's the frogs maybe. But yeah, it's the only way we can solve this problem is education and critical thinking. That you there is no other way.
but Cindy. Okay, so and I guess this is like to the panel. Like, please feel free to chime in because I'm about to spitball if you don't mind. Like, I agree with you that education and critical thinking is the way to be a pathway to reason, right? To the point where when we are having these conversations about people who happen to be different from the well, in America specifically, the majority, that then we can be like, okay, we're not going to give credence to any of these particular false notions or rhetoric that happens to be that's talked about this particular group. But unfortunately, even if you happen to be the most learned person ever in life and you are constantly putting out information that combats rather the propaganda that is actually espoused about a certain people, for some reason it just seems like it just goes through one ear and right out the other. And how and I know for me, especially like for a person like as we all are here because we care about the truth and we spend time making ourselves as educated as possible in order for us to be as well informed as possible about the truth, right? But but for some reason it seems like that we are still in this same circle of constantly combating misinformation, indoctrination, and all the alls when it comes to like having these particular conversations. So
I
how
have
do
the
we
answer
cut
to that.
through that? Yeah, please, Cindy, please.
It can't come from random people. In my country, we have our driving license has points. We have 12 points, and every time you speed too much over the limit or any other thing, you lose points. And when you reach zero, you have to go back to follow some specific courses, and one of them teaches you why it's wrong to act like this, and this is taught by people who teach people to drive. And so we need to do the same. Like when someone commits racially motivated crime, instead of just going to prison or paying a fine or something, they should go to a university or whatever, and they should learn about not because not why they what they did is wrong, but why what they believe is wrong. And show them the facts with books, with studies, with everything, and going to the source of the information. Because if you social media are too polarizing. When you see something, you feel the need to answer quickly, and so you don't think as much, and so you're not touched as much by what other people respond to. And so it needs to be from the top, from the government, from someone with authority to say, okay, Mexicans are not thieves. Look at the statistics. Look at and then go through the arguments and explain why the arguments are false and wrong. And that's the only way to do it, in my opinion.
Infidel and Kelly, what do you say to that?
Well, one thing that I have to say is that right now we're so divided that I don't think there'd ever be any agreement on what is the right way. And I think you probably lost half the United States when you said books. They seem to be wanting to go quite the opposite direction, unfortunately. And that goes back to wanting a dumbed down population and not wanting proper education for them. So while I was a little bit tongue in cheek, I do really believe that that's one of our problems is we are so polarized at this point that I don't think that we have any recognition of authority on either side to go, okay, this is what we do. Because if you had somebody who said, well, no, we shouldn't be teaching people that Mexicans are thieves, you would find 30% of the population out there who would be on your side by default. So then it's about committing to the other ones. And that's why we're so split right now that I don't think that we can make that decision. But I hope that is something that we can do in the future, because you are right in the fact that until we're honest and we can call out misinformation for what it is and actually have a conversation about it, we're really not going to change anything, because we're going to do exactly what Cynthia said, and that is that we're going to talk. It's going to go in one ear and out the other, and that is one of the things that's trying. But I have to remember that there are people that do change their mind. So, you know, what we're doing here, if somebody sees it and just causes them to reconsider one bad idea, that's a step, because nothing changes overnight. But learning that one bad idea is something maybe I should get rid of can help not just the trans community and just the mere right to exist, but a whole realm of things. Because once you start deconstructing a really sick and twisted mindset and worldview that religion tends to get, and that's where a lot of this comes from, once you start deconstructing, it's like pulling a thread on that sweater. You never know where you're going to end up.
Right. Do you think that we can combat one bad idea, Kelly?
Yeah, I think we can. We have. I mean, that's history. It's not something that happens overnight. It's something that takes time. It takes people standing up. In fact, on that note, I was thinking we would be remiss if we didn't, throughout this episode at one point, didn't give up kudos to Max Hightower and his father, Philip, for standing up for what was right. And I really appreciate that they did that. But yeah, I think we can do that. I think we are doing that. One of the problems we have to fight now is one of the ways that we can educate people to accept others is to breed familiarity with those others. And that's when we get people in our society who are being demonized for things that they aren't, that's prohibiting that familiarity with them. And I really think that is a process that's been thought through. We're going to demonize these people because we don't want people to get to know them. We don't want people to accept them. So yeah, kudos to Max for, young high school kid, stood up and made the world a better place. So thank you, Max.
At least in his corner in Texas, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks for lighting that little candle.
Indeed. Yeah, even though I am, a bit jaded, I would definitely have to say, only because been into these particular circles where you are, doing the counter arguments, using facts and data to actually bolster what you're saying. There still is, I will have to say, and this is even by personal experience, about having conversations with people and actually presenting facts, and then that light comes on, like, I did not know that, right? And I even think about the four of us that's even sitting on this panel right now, that, at one point in our lives, we were on one end of the spectrum, and now we're on another end of the spectrum. And I would argue that it was good information that changed our minds from the bad information that we received in the past. And you, dear listener and viewer, if you want to get some more good information, you should listen to more nonprofits. So click here.